Team 19 of 52 teams of 8 competitive rival wisdoms that help make humanity wiser and kinder with antique quotes that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate and entertain generations for centuries. Team quote 19.1. Business is the salt of life. Voltaire 1694 to 1778. This succinct metaphor from Voltaire is particularly interesting coming from someone primarily known as a philosopher and satirist. By comparing business to salt, he makes a profound observation about its essential role in human society. What makes this metaphor particularly clever is how it captures multiple aspects of business's function. Like salt, business is a basic necessity that preserves, maintains economic stability, enhances, adds value to raw materials and labor, can be both beneficial and harmful in different quantities, serves as a catalyst for other processes. I find it fascinating that Voltaire, who often criticized the excesses of power and wealth, still recognized business's fundamental importance to human flourishing. As someone who himself succeeded in business ventures, including publishing and watchmaking, he understood its practical value while maintaining his critical philosophical perspective. The comparison to salt is especially apt because salt was historically not just a seasoning, but a crucial commodity that facilitated trade, preserved food, and even served as currency, much like how business serves multiple essential functions in society. What makes this insight particularly relevant today is how it suggests business isn't just about profit, but about adding necessary flavor and preservation to human activities and relationships. Team quote 19.2. A shortcut to riches is to subtract from our desires. Petrarch 1304 to 1374. This elegant insight from Petrarch flips our usual thinking about wealth on its head. Instead of focusing on accumulation, he suggests that true riches might be found through reduction, specifically, by wanting less rather than having more. What makes this observation particularly powerful is how it redefines the path to wealth. Rather than the long, uncertain road of trying to acquire more, he offers a shortcut through managing our own desires. It's a solution that's immediately available to anyone, regardless of their material circumstances. I find it fascinating how this medieval poet's wisdom anticipates modern discussions about minimalism, voluntary simplicity, and the psychology of happiness. Research increasingly suggests that beyond meeting basic needs, additional wealth often doesn't increase happiness as much as we might expect. The mathematical metaphor of subtract is especially clever. It suggests that reducing desires is as precise and effective an operation for increasing our sense of wealth as adding to our possessions. It's an early version of what we might now call the happiness equation. This perspective seems particularly relevant in our consumer culture, where desires are constantly being created and amplified through advertising and social media. Petrarch's shortcut offers a different path to feeling rich, one that doesn't require chasing ever-increasing wealth, but rather mastering our own wants. Team quote 19.3. A man is not paid for having a head and hands, but for using them. Elbert Hubbard 1856 to 1915. This pragmatic observation from Hubbard cuts right to the heart of value creation. As a writer, artist, and founder of the Roycroft artisan community, he understood that potential alone isn't enough. It must be actively applied to be worth anything. What makes this insight particularly powerful is how it distinguishes between possession and utilization. Everyone has capabilities, a head and hands. But mere possession of these tools doesn't create value. It's their active, purposeful use that matters. I find it fascinating how this principle applies beyond just individual labor to broader questions of human potential. Having resources, talents, or opportunities means little if they remain dormant. The emphasis on using them speaks to the importance of active engagement and practical application. The choice of head and hands is especially telling. It encompasses both mental and physical capabilities, suggesting that all forms of work require active application to generate value. It's not enough to be smart or strong. One must put those qualities to work. This perspective seems particularly relevant today when we often focus on credentials, titles, or potential rather than actual output and contribution. Hubbard reminds us that we're ultimately valued not for what we could do, but for what we actually do with our capabilities. Team quote 19.4. A prudent question is one half of wisdom. Francis Bacon 1561, 1626. This insightful observation from Bacon, a pioneer of empirical science, reveals a deep understanding of how knowledge is acquired. By suggesting that asking the right question is half of wisdom, he elevates the importance of inquiry itself in the pursuit of understanding. What makes this particularly powerful is how it shifts focus from answers to questions. As someone who helped establish the scientific method, Bacon understood that framing the right question often does much of the intellectual heavy lifting. A well-formed question already contains within it the seeds of its answer. I find it fascinating how this connects to Bacon's broader philosophy about the advancement of learning. The word prudent is key here. It suggests that not all questions are equal. A prudent question is careful, thoughtful, and well-considered. It shows wisdom in its very construction. This insight seems especially relevant today, in an era of information abundance. When answers are readily available, the ability to ask good questions becomes even more crucial. It's the difference between gathering information and gaining genuine understanding. The mathematical fraction, 1/2, is interesting too. It suggests that questioning isn't the whole of wisdom, but it's an equal partner with finding answers. Without good questions, even correct answers might not lead to true understanding. Team quote 19.5. Imagination is the eye of the soul. Joseph Joubert 1754–1824. This poetic metaphor from Joubert beautifully captures the essential role of imagination in human consciousness. Just as the eye allows us to perceive the physical world, imagination lets us see beyond immediate reality into the realm of possibility. What makes this insight particularly powerful is how it elevates imagination from mere fancy to a fundamental faculty of human understanding. Joubert suggests that imagination is not just for daydreaming. It's our soul's way of perceiving deeper truths and possibilities that aren't visible to our physical eyes. I find it fascinating how this metaphor works on multiple levels. Like the physical eye, imagination lets us see what's not immediately present, helps us navigate through complex territories, can be developed and trained, serves as a bridge between inner and outer worlds. The choice of soul, rather than mind, is significant. It suggests that imagination isn't just an intellectual faculty, but something that connects to our deepest sense of being and purpose. It's our tool for envisioning not just what is, but what could be. This perspective seems particularly relevant today, when we often prioritize rational, analytical thinking over imaginative vision. Joubert reminds us that imagination is not opposed to understanding. It's essential to it, allowing us to see beyond the surface of things to their deeper meaning and potential. Team quote 19.6. An overflow of good converts to bad. William Shakespeare 1564–1616. This insightful observation from Shakespeare captures a profound truth about balance and excess. Coming from someone who masterfully portrayed how virtues could transform into vices, this principle appears throughout his works. From how excessive love leads to tragedy in Romeo and Juliet, to how too much ambition corrupts in Macbeth. What makes this particularly interesting is how it challenges our usual assumption that if something is good, more of it must be better. Instead, Shakespeare suggests that even positive qualities or circumstances can become harmful when they exceed proper bounds. I find it fascinating how this principle appears in so many domains. Too much praise can lead to arrogance. Excessive caution can become paralysis. Abundant wealth can corrupt character. Even too much truth-telling can become cruelty. The word overflow is especially apt. It suggests that like a river overflowing its banks, good things need proper channels and boundaries to remain beneficial. Once they exceed these bounds, they can cause damage despite their inherently positive nature. This wisdom seems particularly relevant today, when we often struggle with questions of excess, from information overload to material abundance. Shakespeare reminds us that moderation isn't just about limiting bad things, but about properly containing good ones. Team Quote 19.7. Action speaks louder than words, but not nearly as often. Mark Twain 1835–1910. This is classic Twain, taking a familiar saying, actions speak louder than words, and adding a satirical twist that reveals a deeper truth about human nature. The addition of, but not nearly as often, transforms it from a simple moral maxim into a wry commentary on human behavior. What makes this observation particularly clever is how it acknowledges both the power of action and its relative rarity. Twain recognizes that while deeds may indeed be more meaningful than words, we humans tend to find it much easier to talk than to act. I find it fascinating how this insight serves as both wisdom and social criticism. It's not just observing that actions matter more. It's pointing out our tendency to substitute words for deeds, to promise rather than perform, to speak rather than do. The humor here is characteristically Twain, using wit to deliver a sharp observation about human nature. It's the kind of gentle but pointed criticism he was famous for, highlighting our foibles while acknowledging our shared human tendency toward taking the easier path. This seems particularly relevant in our current era of social media and constant communication, where it's easier than ever to make statements and declarations without following through with meaningful action. Twain's observation reminds us that while everyone can talk, actual deed-doing is a rarer commodity. Team Quote 19.8. A man is what he thinks about all day long. Ralph Waldo Emerson 1803–1882. This profound observation from Emerson captures a fundamental truth about how our thoughts shape our character and identity. As a transcendentalist philosopher who emphasized the power of individual consciousness, he understood that our dominant thoughts ultimately define us. What makes this insight particularly powerful is how it places responsibility for who we are squarely in our own hands. By focusing on all day long, Emerson suggests it's not our occasional thoughts, but our habitual ones that form our character. It's what we consistently return to in our minds that shapes who we become. I find it fascinating how this principle anticipates modern psychological understanding about neural pathways and habit formation. Just as our brains create stronger connections through repeated thoughts, our character is formed through persistent patterns of thinking. The simplicity of the statement belies its depth. It's not just that our thoughts influence us. Emerson is suggesting a direct equivalence between what we think about and what we are. This has profound implications for personal development, suggesting that we can reshape ourselves by consciously directing our thoughts. This seems especially relevant today, when we're constantly bombarded with external stimuli competing for our attention. Emerson's insight reminds us that what we choose to dwell on mentally isn't just passing time. It's actively shaping who we are becoming. And if you'd like to help raise school test scores and self-confidence, you can give your kids free Easy Extra Advantage math, spelling and reading workbooks you can download for free at stop2think.com or buy at educationstopshate.com. Free Easy Math Wisdom workbooks with octo-repetition to grow math self-confidence. You'll get plenty of repetitive practice of age ranges and averages of our 52 teams of 8 quote authors. Free Easy Alpha cipher-coded puzzles teach letters, numbers, and phrases using antique wisdoms that encourage and educate. Can you decode this cipher quote of encouragement using either our learning to spell or just for fun instructions? And since time is money, practice reading faster with 52 teams of antique rival wisdoms that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate, and entertain generations for centuries. We offer printed versions and timed videos with background music. Sign up for free weekly emails of 52 teams of antique rival wisdom workbooks with easy math, spelling, and reading practice. And if you'd like to get paid for sharing our wearable wisdoms, keep this in mind. Everyone I know wears a shirt, and most of us change them daily, so change your shirt and change the world. Social equalities are blatantly subliminal antique positive wisdoms repetitively shared without saying a word. This applies to all our wearable shareable wisdoms, like pretty witty baby onesies and baby teas that you and others will see and read multiple times a day. The same is true with pretty witty kids, but they'll also share these wisdoms with anyone that can read at daycare or school. Youthful truths let your kids gain confidence, sharing antique wisdoms with their friends. Imagine them sharing words of wisdom with classmates and teachers. Therefore I think teas I wear is a super easy way to share words of wisdom that have passed the test of time. Our social equalities help make us all wiser and kinder with blatantly subliminal messages, promoting a more fair and equal opportunity society for all. And don't forget our giftwisdoms.com for birthdays and holidays that makes it easy to share the wisdom with clothing, coffee mugs, and magnets. So do the future a favor by encouraging, educating, and entertaining with words of wisdom that have passed the test of time to make us all wiser and kinder. With wearable wisdoms to fit babies, kids, and adults, you can clothe a whole family, city, or state. Join the 52 of 8 today at 52of8.com.